In this video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know about Figma's auto layout in 5 minutes or less. Obviously, we're not going to have enough time to cover every single feature, but this should be enough to get you up and running. So I think the easiest example to explain auto layout is by creating a simple button. So back in the day, we used to have to create a text layer and then also create some sort of rectangle or shape behind it and then group it. And then anytime you change that text, you'd have to readjust the shapes and so on. Now with Figma Auto Layout, you can just hit Shift A on any layer, and that's automatically going to apply a new frame around that with some auto layout properties. So now we can adjust the spacing to the left and right, as well as the spacing top and bottom. And if we wanted to add a background color, we can do that by adjusting the fill, and then you can increase that, add some border radius, and style it from there. You can also nest auto layout groups. So if we wanted a group of buttons, we could hit Command G to group this and then Shift A. We're going to want to make sure that this is set to hug contents so that as many buttons as we add, it's automatically going to resize that group of buttons. Now, if you want to change the orientation, you can go from a vertical layout to horizontal. Now it's going to put them all in a row versus a column. And then we can also adjust the padding between those elements. Now you'll notice right now what it's doing is it's actually resizing the buttons individually. And if we select all of those buttons, it's because this is actually set to fill. What that means is that however many elements there are, it's going to divide the width of those elements by the total width of the container. So I have this group of buttons here, and as I resize it, you'll see that the buttons are scaling up to fill. So it's actually ignoring the individual button sizes, and it's just dividing the total number of buttons and distributing that width evenly. Now, if you don't want that to happen and you want to keep your buttons how you had it at the beginning, you can click into those buttons and change from fill to hug. Now you're going to have a really large container with this empty space, but at least your buttons are going to be the size you want. Now you can adjust the spacing, but let's say you wanted all 5 of these buttons to be equally distributed. Instead of setting a number, you can right-click this and then select Auto. And now this is going to do the reverse of applying the width equally, and it's going to apply the spacing equally. So you'll see inside now we're adjusting that auto layout in between each of those elements. So as I scale this down, the buttons are staying the same size, but the spacing between them is being distributed equally. Now I'm going to create a simple little avatar component to show you some other properties of auto layout. Now for this one, I don't want the avatar to resize the shape depending on the acronym or the letters inside. I always want it to be kind of a perfect circle. Right now it's hugging, so it's 42 wide by 39. We're going to change this from hug to fixed for both of these. And for this one, I'm just going to set 40 for both. Now that does mean that if I start resizing and adding more text, the shape's not going to resize, but that's okay because in this instance, we don't want it to resize. We want to maintain that fixed width. But let's say we want to have multiple of these avatars stacked on top of each other. But let's just group that and then hit Shift A. Now the reason I'm grouping first is that if you hit Shift A on most elements, it's going to automatically apply 10 pixels of padding to the top and bottom and the left and right. So if I go back here, if I hit Shift A, you'll see all this dead space around. If you want that, that's fine, but that grouping is just a quick hack to get around that, and then you hit Shift A. So we can duplicate this out, and in order to get these to stack on top of each other, we're going to use what Auto Layout calls canvas stacking. Now you're not going to see that in this initial set of properties. You're going to want to click this little control icon, and here you're going to see that canvas stacking. Now you'll see the demo here, we can set it to last on top or first on top, but nothing's really happening. And the reason is because we haven't set a negative padding on the gap between those elements. So that same parameter we were changing to space out our buttons, we can also go into the negatives and we can start overlapping elements like this. And now if we go back to that canvas stacking, you'll see it's actually going to switch which one is on top. You'll get an idea of how that can look, and you can tweak that padding however you want. The last property we're going to look at is the wrap layout. So we talked about the vertical and horizontal layout. You can also have new elements kick to a new line when there's not enough space for them in the original row. So let's say we want all of these card components to automatically wrap to a new row once we hit that third element or whatever you've decided you want. But if we duplicate these out right now, it's just going to keep filling and making them smaller and distributing that width equally. So the first thing to do is select all of those, and we'll change this from a fill width to fixed. And we're going to set something like 350. Now you see it's still overflowing in the container, but we can select that frame now and then choose wrap. And you'll see that it kicks that fourth element down to a new row and it keeps going for as many elements as you have. So if we keep duplicating this, it'll automatically create new rows. This is really handy if you don't want to have an auto layout for each row. You can just have one group to control all of it. When you do that, you're also going to see a new gap property. So before we were just controlling the vertical or horizontal, but now that we're doing both, we can actually set the padding for the vertical and the horizontal. So if you wanted separate paddings between the rows than you do between the items in a row, you can control that there. So that's everything you need to know to get started with auto layout. I hope that was helpful. If so, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.